The disciples, the first 12 apostles, were all very common people.
They are,
And
they remember the right disciple. They didn't mean the mistake the people.
right.
But as a person, you know, remember, maybe you remember different, I remember different.
Right.
And it didn't go to right.
Yes.
But in the Muhammad's case, they keep writing every word
Yes.
when he begins to talk like that.
Yes. Yeah. Again, I think the interesting parallel. I had a person who was elected to be an elder in our church, which is one of our leaders, and she said, "I don't feel qualified. I didn't go to college." And I said, "I'm sorry, I forgot. Can you tell me what Peter's undergraduate degree was in?" Because the cornerstone apostle was a fisherman.
Fishing.
He's not. It wasn't oceanography. It wasn't marine biology. He was a fisherman. And so I think, and there's also a miracle within Christianity, the miracle of Pentecost. That again, it's different, but it's interesting to me that the belief is that the Spirit of God came upon the apostles and they spoke in every language of the known world. Well, they were fishermen from Galilee. I mean, how did that happen? How did they know those languages? So it's an interesting...
Actually, there's a similar story. In Islamic culture, there's a scholar, Imam Ghazali. He's a very famous scholar. And at that time, there's a big philosophical explosion in Muslim nations as well. And there were some philosophers, and they were pretty close to the atheism, okay? So, and all the time, as an Islamic scholar, he was trying to find the answers, okay? And he was basically sharing these answers with the rest of the community, okay? And one time, again, the people were announcing, you know, Imam Ghazali, the scholar, were going to answer these questions and that questions. And one of the old lady said that, I guess Imam Ghazali has some problems with his faith as well. He has some questions and he's answering his own questions, own questions. So faith and literacy or knowledge doesn't sometimes go together.
It does, yeah, the more we learn, the more we know what we don't know. Or the closer you get, the more expensive. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing up the suppressed childhood memories of VBS when I was 8 years old.
Sorry.
I appreciate that. I could taste goldfish and juice in my mouth. So thank you for that. But through that song, I thought it was a great illustration of how you used to talk about how we're all sons of Abraham, Father Abraham.
I mean, look at the family tree.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people.
Right. And going back to, at the end, how you talk about us blessing one another in Genesis 12, the blessing. What is the blessing that we can give? What's the blessing in Genesis 12 that comes through the sons of Abraham? And how can we bless one another? What is that blessing, and how can we bless?
Well, I've been answering all these questions like I'm the expert of what that, but I think that's a wonderful question to take with us and to ask that question. And I think that blessing comes in many forms. We were sitting at a table with an engineer, and he said, this does not have anything to do with our topic tonight, because he thought that the conflict between Sarah and Hagar was an electrical circuit. And yet, engineers, people who are gifted with minds to think in those categories, bless the world. They have the capacity to bless the world in many ways. To take the gifts that God has given them and use them for good. And then we each have gifts. We each have abilities, talents, skills that God has given us, that our life history has nurtured in us. And when we can use those for the betterment of the world, for the reconciliation of the world, then we are a blessing to each other. People who have the skills to be doctors and nurses, think about the blessings that they give to people. Teachers. I mean, you could come up with a way that we all can bless based on using our own God-given gifts for the sake of the world, not just for our own sake, for improving ourselves, but for the sake of the world. To me, that's one way that blessing happens. Within the Jewish tradition, that's a powerful word, because I was talking with a friend who's a rabbi. He asked me, Joe, how many Jews do you think there are in the world? And I thought, well, there's 3 major world religions, or 3 major world, there's more than that. But Christianity, Islam, Judaism. People think of Judaism as a major world religion. There's, over 1 billion Muslims, over 1 billion, perhaps 2 billion Christians, depending on how you count people. Well over 2 billion Buddhists. So Jews, I know that there's not, that many, but I would guess, 100 million. There are 13 million Jews in the world. That's a really small number. It helps me understand the anxiety about preservation. And so I was like, wow. But then you think about what Jewish people have contributed to society. It's amazing that such a small number of people could contribute technologies and concepts that are, and I think that's true for all of us, but I think that's an example of, from their perspective, living out, you will be a blessing to all the families of the earth. Whoever figures out alternative fuel sources for us is going to bless the world. Not a gift that I'm going to have. I barely made it through chemistry. I'm not going to figure that out. But who knows? Somebody in this room might be involved in that. Does that make sense? I think the call is the perspective that we are given those gifts not just for our own sake, but for the sake of the world. We're called to offer ourselves. Yes?
First of all, I apologize that my English is weak.
It's better than my Turkish.
Our religion, Islam, God has sent many messengers from Adam to Prophet Muhammad.
Yes.
And there's no difference between them, because in second chapter of the Quran, verse 286, there's a verse that there's no difference between all messenger of God in terms of being prophet. If I heard mistakenly, please correct me. You said that Ishmael is your father, you are the son of the Ishmael, and you are the son of Isaac.
Yes. But for Christians, it's an adoption thing.
But according to our religion, there's no difference between all messengers, and also Islam is not belongs to any nation, any region.
Yes.
So can you give me more explanation of this?
Well, I would think Christianity is also not belong to a nation. There has been nationalistic Christian movements in history. And I think you could probably say the same about Islam, but some people would interpret the Islamist movement in that way. But that's a similarity. I think for Christians, for us in our belief, what we hold to be the revelation of God in Christ, in Jesus, that's a trump card for us. Now, what Jesus shows us about God, that's a matter of interpretation among Christians. So I stand before you tonight partly because of what I believe about God as revealed to me in Christ. Others might not understand it that way. So I think there would be a difference in that if in Islam there's no difference between the prophets as named in the Quran, and then Muhammad is the final prophet who gives the final revelation. Within Christianity, we would say God is